Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're in Exodus chapter 22. We're going to look at verses 1 through 15. Here's the text. When a man steals an ox or a sheep and butchers it or sells it, he must repay 5 cattle for the ox or 4 sheep for the sheep. If a thief is caught in the act of breaking in and he is beaten to death, no one is guilty of bloodshed. But if this happens after sunrise, the householder is guilty of bloodshed. A thief must make full restitution. If he's unable, he is to be sold because of his theft. If what was stolen, whether ox, donkey, or sheep, is actually found alive in his possession, he must repay double. So these are laws about livestock theft. Because animals like donkeys, for example, they didn't produce things like milk. Instead, they're beasts of burden. They man plows. They make it possible to travel in the case of the Exodus. And as this law is set for the context of the Promised Land, is they're used to help cultivate fields. Right now, they're all living off of like manna and quail from heaven, but these laws are being set in place so that when they arrive in the Promised Land, everything is fair. Everybody's going into the Promised Land, and that second generation of Israelites, plus Joseph and Caleb, with full knowledge of how things are going to work before they even arrive. They have a whole constitution and governmental system, even liability and insurance and manslaughter and restitution, legality set by God 40 years ahead of time. So everybody knows how things are going to function when they arrive. And you can imagine that these laws also may have applied in some contexts during the Exodus. So you can see that there's this difference between, burglary, which, you don't know if this guy's coming into your house at night. You don't know what his intentions are. And then if it happens after sunrise, then the homeowner's guilty of bloodshed because he can see what's going on. That guy doesn't need to die. He's just trying to steal a sheep. And so there's restitution that's set, and because there's criminal intent here, it's disproportionately assigned as a punishment to the thief, and this discourages theft, especially theft at night. And because theft at night can result in you being killed, you're less likely to try to steal at night. And if you're more likely to steal during the day, you're less likely to steal because you'll get busted. And if they find you with that animal alive in your possession, you have to pay double. So these are laws about restitution, and they're also laws of deterrence, laws about crop protection. So even the crops are protected. When a man lets a field or vineyard be grazed in, remember this is during the Exodus. They're not planting vineyards during the Exodus. When a man lets a field or vineyard be grazed in and then allows his animal to go and graze in someone else's field, he must repay with the best of his own field or vineyard. When a fire gets out of control, spreads to thorn bushes, and consumes stacks of cut grain, standing grain, or a field, the one who started the fire must make full restitution for what was burned. Here it is again. Man, there's even laws on arson, and if you cause a fire, they beat us and Australia to these laws. Laws about personal property. When a man gives his neighbor valuables or goods to keep, but they are stolen from that person's house, the thief, if caught, must repay double. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house must present himself to the judges to determine whether or not he has taken his neighbor's property. Okay, so if you give something valuable for your neighbor to keep and then his house is robbed, your friend who was keeping your stuff has to stand trial to see if he's actually trying to cover up his own theft. In any case of wrongdoing involving an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or anything else lost, so look at this, we've run the gamut from animals to crops and arson, and now even clothing. And someone claims, that's mine, the case between the two parties is to come before the judges. The one the judges condemn must repay double to his neighbor. So you're bringing in these hopefully neutral third-party objective judges to eliminate what in the modern legal sense is considered hearsay. So wow, this sense of justice was really specific and really quite fair. And also, I'd argue, way more efficient than our modern court system. It also protected us from a litigious society. When a man gives his neighbor a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to care for, but it dies, is injured, or is stolen while no one is watching, there must be an oath before the Lord between the two of them to determine whether or not he has taken his neighbor's property. Its owner must accept the oath, and the other man does not have to make restitution. But in fact, if in fact the animal was stolen from his custody, he must make restitution to its owner. So you're taking responsibility in more ways than one. You're responsible for this animal, and then you're responsible for restitution if it's stolen while it's under your care. If it was actually torn apart by a wild animal, he is to bring it as evidence. He does not have to make restitution for the torn carcass. Okay, so this is this is habeas corpus 3,500 years ago. Habeas corpus means show me the body, present the body. Habeas corpus. See that corpse in the word corpus? Show me the body. Okay, without that evidence, without that proof, you've got nothing. This is habeas corpus before the founding of the Roman Empire. It's so advanced. It's incredible. It's perfectly fair. It absolutely discouraged frivolous lawsuits, something that is clogging our legal system today. And it made it impossible because it's set by just the law. When a man borrows an animal from his neighbor and it is injured or dies while its owner is not there with it, the man must make full restitution. If its owner is there with it, the man does not have to make restitution. If it was rented, the loss is covered by its rental price. So look at that. Even like the presence of the owner indemnifies the from culpability for anything that happens to the animal. I know that it sounds nitpicky, but you got to step back and look. You got to marvel at how perfectly just all of these policies are. There's one thing I want to close with. When you do come to matters of hearsay, such as when a man is caring for his neighbor's donkey, ox, or sheep, and it dies, it's injured or stolen, but there's no evidence. You cannot habeas corpus. You cannot present the body. You have no video footage. You have no way to prove it. And there's no way to discern, and there's no judgment to be called here. Look at how God intervenes directly in the justice system here. There must be an oath before the Lord between the two of them to determine whether or not he has taken his neighbor's property. Its owner must accept the oath, and the other man does not have to make restitution. So here's where God intervenes, and he does so on the basis of the commandment that he's already given. Do not steal. Do not lie. All right, what is that? That's the eighth commandment. All right, the eighth commandment is do not steal. I mean, that's pretty amazing. You can't lie about something and say I didn't steal it. You've been commanded by God to do this. But when there's no forensics to be done, you got to go before the Lord and you make this vow before the Lord. And these vows before the Lord were no small matter. They appear numerous times throughout Scripture, and there are severe spiritual consequences for violating them. This is where God is the arbiter in the legal process, even over matters of accusations of theft for livestock. He intervened. He enforced the law. So this was the perfect system of justice for Old Testament Israel. And it speaks to the sense of justice of God. And it builds upon and further specifies the implications in the context of Old Testament Israel beyond the 10 commandments. But you can see how do not steal is a command. And then there are legal penalties within the context of Old Testament Israel if you steal. These are the laws of God, based on the commandments of God for the people of God in the Old Covenant. And every one of them spoke to the ultimate sense of justice. You want justice, you need God. Because a godless version of justice built over an abyss of nihilism, which renders every statement ever made meaningless a priori. If you want justice, if you consider yourself a social justice warrior, you are necessarily appealing to the ultimate authority, and that's God. You cannot have any meaningful definition for justice without God.